While you were there, you were then also became, actually in 1960, you became executive assistant to O.W. Wilson in Chicago Police Department. Can you tell us about O.W. and what was happening there?
Yeah. The Chicago experience came before the university experience, but the after the experience in the Bar Foundation, having worked with O.W. Wilson, and despite my questioning of the checklist, was largely his product, he invited me to become his executive assistant when I came to, when he was appointed in what was really essentially at that time a fluke, the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department.
O.W. Wilson is the author of Police Administration, the standard textbook for many, many decades on policing. It really represents the traditional approach to
that was the epitome of the professional model of policing.
The professional model, in brief?
Well, it was an effort to bring the police out of the dark ages, to say that we have a body of knowledge or information that guides us in what we do. It had elements of raising the ethics of policing, the qualifications of police officers, and the efficiency of the organization. Those were some of the key characteristics.
What kind of things did you do in Chicago as executive assistant?
Well, if you relate it to the professional model policing, Chicago at the time was one of the very backward large city police departments. Hadn't been touched or reformed or reorganized for many years. Had serious problems of corruption. And it was when one of those problems became most acute that they decided they had to make a dramatic change. And that's when they had a nationwide search for a new police chief, and it ultimately selected the person who had been appointed the head of the selection committee, was O.W. Wilson, who had previously been dean of the School of Criminology at California. Right.
What kind of projects did you attempt?
Well, as you could well imagine, if you've got a department that was down at its heels, where they couldn't even account for where their personnel were and what they were doing, that it required an incredible amount of fundamental work. And that's where the checklist came in handy. I long ago concluded that there's no sense trying to go on to advanced concepts of refining a police operation until you know where people are and where everything's in place and where they're reasonably well equipped, and where if one person, people can talk to each other, and there are record systems and things like that. So it took us about a minimum of 2 years, which was miraculous at the time, but with all of this coming with the support of then Mayor Daley and his unlimited funds, to totally restructure that department. In the first year, 1,000 of the officers resigned because they just were not interested and supportive of this kind of reform. So and we had a revolution within the department.
So at the time, 1960, when you joined, the Chicago Police Department really didn't have a good record-keeping system. They didn't have the equipment they needed.
None. There were precincts in which they were using their private cars because they didn't have any cars that were operating.
So within 2 years, you really applied this.
It was massive. Building buildings, remodeling buildings, purchasing close to 1,000 vehicles, establishing training programs, establishing record systems, establishing internal investigation mechanisms. It was a very, very ambitious reform effort that was achieved largely because we had the support of the community and the city government.
So that was a major achievement in the second largest police department in the country.
At the time, one that was certainly gave the city and the people who were involved a great sense of pride. Good.
But based on your Bar Foundation experience, you knew that there was something more that needed to be done. And how did you try to implement any?
After we were sitting on top of this nice, refined, cleaned up, operation, and things were operating very efficiently to the point that they were very impressive. I had, and several other people had, the feeling that there's more to this that we've got to get at. We could get to calls very quickly, but there was a serious question: what did we do when we got there? How effective were we in dealing with the problems in the end? We knew we were more efficient. We knew, for example, we were dealing with racial issues much more effectively. But were we solving problems? Were we being any better at dealing with street robberies than we were in the past? And that was begging additional questions as to what are the goals, what are the objectives of change in policing.
What was the program evaluation and policy planning unit that you?
Well, program evaluation and policy planning. The acronym for that was PEP. And that was an illustration of what we were trying to do to reach beyond the old efficiency professional model. We had a large research unit in the department, but it was concerned with streamlining forms, developing the budgets, analyzing crime, developing policies, very routine sorts of things, many of which were just part of the research and planning operations that were common in police departments around the country. But there was nothing in that unit that looked at the end product of policing. What were we doing?
What the police actually do
right.
out there on the street.
The problems that we were trying to handle out in the street and how effective we were in dealing with them. So the PEP unit was a small, almost token effort to bring together 5-6 people and assign to each one who had some potential that we identified, and assign to them tasks of saying, in this bigger complex, how effective are we in dealing with street robberies? How effective are we in dealing with bicycle thefts? And we tried to focus in on the specific problems. That was the beginning of a real focus on the problems. And it was modest. It didn't really go very far.
How did the commanders take to this?
They thought they were in new waters. They didn't quite understand why they were being asked to do this. They were very imaginative. In retrospect, their inquiries were very superficial and just sort of assembled then current police myths and concepts about how we deal with this. But we didn't press in depth the exploration, certainly in no way comparing to where problem-area policing is today.
But still, the germ of the idea.
The germ of the idea was there.
Problem-area policing was there, and this is really kind of the important linchpin between your Barr Foundation research, which opened up this your view of policing, and more formal program to try to change.
And I should add, I didn't get as much enthusiasm for that effort as I did for acquiring new cars and new uniforms and new communication systems.